All right, so you ready to dive deep again? This time it's Alcatraz escapes. I mean, come on.
Yeah, tough to top this one.
Yeah, seriously. I know you're into history, a little mystery too, so this one's right in your wheelhouse. Picture this. An island prison, middle of San Francisco Bay, freezing water, currents strong enough to sweep you away. Sharks too.
Sounds like a movie, but yeah, that was Alcatraz, designed to be inescapable. From 34 to 63, it held some of the most infamous criminals America had. The thinking was even if you got off the island, the bay itself would get you.
But they say where there's a will, right? And these guys, they were determined. 36 escape attempts, 34 prisoners. Some were caught, some gave up, some, well, they died trying, and then a few just disappeared, gone, vanished. Makes you think, like, what was going through their heads planning these escapes? What was the breaking point?
That's the thing about these stories. Each one is a window into their minds. Desperation, cleverness, that unwavering belief that they could beat the odds. It's incredible.
So let's start at the beginning, shall we? Joseph Bowers, 1936. He was burning trash, saw his chance, and took off running. Sadly, he was shot while climbing a fence.
Tragic.
There's even a theory he was trying to get shot. Suicide by cop adds another layer to this whole thing.
It does make you wonder about the conditions they lived in. Was escape really the goal? Or was it to escape the reality they couldn't handle anymore?
And then just a year later, you've got Theodore Cole and Ralph Rowe. 1937, they vanish into the fog, never seen again.
Poof. Like that.
Did they drown, make it to shore, start new lives? Who knows? The mystery's still out there.
That's the thing about Alcatraz. Even the failed escapes are fascinating because there are so many questions left unanswered.
Okay, now for a real nail-biter. The 1946 Battle of Alcatraz. This wasn't just some guy sneaking out. This was a full-on prison uprising. 6 inmates, they overpowered guards, got weapons, and took control of the whole cell house.
Their plan was to get a boat and escape, but they couldn't get the keys to the outside door.
Right. So for 2 days, they held guards hostage, trying to negotiate their freedom. Wild.
It didn't end well. The Marines ended up storming the cell house.
Tragic. 3 prisoners, 2 guards killed. The surviving prisoners, more charges. Some even got the death penalty.
Talk about high stakes. This event, it solidified Alcatraz's reputation as a place of violence and pure desperation.
I mean, imagine the psychological impact, right? Not just on the prisoners, but the guards too. Always that tension, knowing things could erupt at any moment, must have been incredibly stressful.
Oh, absolutely. Imagine the pressure, knowing it's your job to keep these guys contained. Men willing to risk it all for a taste of freedom.
Now, not every escape is like that, full of violence. Some were meticulously planned, real cunning involved. The most famous, of course, is the June 1962 escape. Frank Morris and the Anglin brothers.
Legendary escape. Not just for the audacity, but the sheer brilliance of it. These guys spent months, maybe years, meticulously planning every single detail.
All right, so let's break this down. They chipped away at the concrete around an air vent in their cells. Spoons, forks, anything they could get their hands on. They even made a drill out of a stolen vacuum cleaner motor. The patience, the determination, I can't even imagine.
All the while, they were covering their tracks. Fake walls to hide their work, using music hour to cover the noise. Clever, right?
And then there's the dummy heads they left in their beds. Soap, toilet paper, concrete dust, even real human hair. Resourceful doesn't even cut it. It's like a heist movie come to life.
And their ingenuity? It didn't stop there. They replaced the rivets on a vent shaft grill, used soap dummies, created a secret passage to the roof.
Up on the roof, over 50 raincoats, taken from other inmates, all stitched together to make a raft. They vanished into the night, leaving those dummy heads behind, fooled the guards for hours.
Official story is they probably drowned, but there's always been evidence they may have lived. Raft found on Angel Island, stolen car reports, even whispers they made it to South America.
For someone who loves a good puzzle, like me, you can't help but get drawn into the mystery of it all. Did they pull it off? The impossible.
It's a question that still gets people, even today. Speaks to that never-ending power of hope, even in the most desperate of situations. They truly believed they could outsmart the system, even when the odds were completely stacked against them.
And it wasn't always elaborate schemes. Sometimes it was surprisingly simple. John Giles, 1945, stole an army uniform, walked right onto a ferry leaving the island, almost got away with it too.
It's almost funny, isn't it? The impossible escape, almost successful because of a simple oversight. Makes you wonder, how many other close calls were there?
It shows that even in a place like Alcatraz, all the security in the world, human error, could still play a role.
Makes you think, huh? All the things that had to line up just right or wrong, I guess, for someone to even get close to busting out of Alcatraz.
No kidding. Talking about close calls, Floyd Wilson back in '56, he's another one, vanished from his work detail, hid out among the rocks for, get this, 12 hours.
He was trying to build a raft, out of driftwood he found, but gave up eventually. They caught him. Shows you how far they go. And the environment itself, that was part of the challenge, too.
Oh yeah, not just the prison walls, the bay itself, that freezing water, those currents, the
Yeah.
rocky shoreline. If you're someone who appreciates nature, it's a reminder that even the toughest escapee couldn't ignore those forces.
For sure. Like, think about Aaron Burgett and Clyde Johnson, 1958. They overpowered a guard during garbage duty, jumped right into the water.
I read Burja even tried using plastic bags, like the kind you get from the store, to help him float, and tied boards to his feet, makeshift swim fins. Resourceful, but not enough.
Sadly, Johnson was caught pretty quickly. Burgett, his body was found in the bay 2 weeks later. Just shows even the most creative plans, they could end in tragedy.
Makes you realize the risks they were taking, but also what was going on in their minds. Were they scared? Hopeful?
Hard to say for sure, but I think it gets to that basic human need, freedom. Even in a place designed to crush that hope, they still held on to it.
And that brings us back to Frank Morris and the Anglin brothers. Their story, it still grabs people all these years later. What do you think it is about their escape that resonates so much?
Well, I think a few things. It's the sheer brilliance of it, right? They weren't just strong-arming their way out. They used their minds, their creativity. As someone who loves a good heist flick, you can't help but admire that kind of resourcefulness.
True. The way they used everyday stuff to make tools, the dummy heads, the raincoat raft, it's incredible.
And then there's the mystery. Did they make it? Did they drown? We just don't know for sure, and that keeps it alive.
It's like a real-life puzzle, and everyone has their own theory. Makes you think, if they did survive, what were their lives like afterward?
A question that's led to so many books, documentaries, investigations all these years later speaks to that fascination we have with beating the odds, triumphing over impossible situations.
It's more than just breaking out of a physical prison. It's about the human spirit refusing to be locked down, refusing to break.
Exactly. And it makes you think about the bigger picture. What does it say about us as humans? That even in Alcatraz, a place meant to crush individuality, to crush hope, people still found a way to resist, to dream of something more.
Powerful message about the resilience of the human spirit, but also raises some questions, maybe uncomfortable ones.
Like, what do you mean?
Well, think about it. What does it say about a society that builds a place like Alcatraz in the first place? Meant to be inescapable, the ultimate punishment.
That's an interesting point. Makes us look at our justice system, how we view punishment versus rehabilitation. And those are conversations that are still relevant, even today.
Yeah, Alcatraz goes beyond just the island. It's an idea. It makes us think about security versus human rights, the purpose of prison, the very nature of freedom.
And it highlights how important it is to understand the people who were locked up there, their experiences, what drove them, their hopes, their struggles.
Okay, before we finish up this deep dive, let's focus on one more escape. We've talked about brute force, careful planning, even disguises. But John Paul Scott, December 1962, his escape was something else entirely.
Ah, yes. The only confirmed case of someone swimming from Alcatraz to the mainland. Can you imagine? That frigid water, the currents.
He swam all the way to Fort Point, right under the Golden Gate Bridge. How strong do you have to be, physically and mentally, to do that?
It's amazing. Of course, when they found him, he had hypothermia, was exhausted, but he survived.
Really shows you the limits of what we can endure, how far we'll go for a chance at freedom.
A true testament to the will to survive, to overcome incredible obstacles.
Yeah.
But it also raises some ethical questions,
Like what?
Well, as admirable as his determination is, it also speaks to just how desperate these men were. What kind of place pushes someone to risk their life like that?
That's a good point. Something to keep in mind when we talk about prison reform, treating inmates humanely.
Definitely. Because in the end, these stories are about more than just escaping from Alcatraz. They're about that human desire for dignity, for hope, for a chance at a better life.
And that message, it goes beyond time and place. It connects with all of us, no matter who we are or what we believe. It's crazy. Alcatraz closed down in '63. That's, almost 60 years ago? But people are still obsessed with it. It's like it's part of American legend now, isn't it?
It really is. Alcatraz, it's more than just a place now. It's this idea. It means being locked up, isolated, but it also represents that human spirit, that drive to break free, not just physically, but in every way.
Makes you wonder, what if it stayed open? Would they still be trying to escape? Would security be even crazier than it was?
It's an interesting thought. Technology's come a long way since then. Imagine the surveillance they could have now. But then again, who knows what kind of clever escape plans they'd cook up to counter that.
Good point. It's like that constant battle back and forth, the people in charge trying to hold on, and the individuals fighting to break free. It's a theme that runs through all of history, and for someone like me who loves history, it's just fascinating.
Totally. And the stories from Alcatraz, they remind us that history isn't just dates and facts. It's about people. The choices we make, what happens because of those choices, and that never-ending power of hope.
We've covered a lot today, haven't we? From Joseph Bauer's very first attempt to the legendary escape of Morris and the Anglins to John Paul Scott actually swimming to freedom. Every story is unique, but they all have those same themes. Wanting to be free, the ingenuity of people, and just how far we'll go for a chance at a different life.
And they make us ask some tough questions about punishment, about how effective our justice system really is, and about the importance of giving people a chance to rehabilitate.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into Alcatraz escapes, I want to leave you with this. These stories, they're more than just daring escapes. They're a reflection of us as a society,
Right.
how we deal with freedom, with justice, with the human spirit. Thanks for coming along on this journey with us to Alcatraz, a place that really tested the limits of what humans can endure and that desire for freedom that never dies.